So here we are, Dale, the Deester, Mayor of Muizenberg, and we're in his,
it is
3 litre
300 TDI Isuzu 2003.
How long have you had this puppy for?
Since 2012, so going on 8 years.
How many Ks have we got on that truck?
289,000, which I heard is breaking her in.
That's barely broken in. I mean, I've been saying this for years, best 3 litre turbo diesel in the business. They're still putting these in the brand new ones.
Still putting, but the only precursor with the Isuzus is it happened to a friend of mine who's got a farm in the Crags, is that they overheat after a while, so you have to keep flushing the radiator. Over time you get a build-up of rust in the pipes, excuse me, and in the radiator, and that's what happened to me, and it was 15,500 rand lesson. Had to overhaul the engine, the head gasket and the rings.
It just shows you the importance of keeping your cooling system maintained if you're driving a diesel.
Yeah.
And since the engine work, how's it pulling?
It's even better, and it feels like the engine before was dampened. So they dampened it a bit for speed, and so now it's got much more acceleration. It's got the same amount of torque, but much more movement.
Apparently you can get 30% more power out of this engine.
That's what that's now what I'm finding. I'm finding that she's got a bit more raw, so I think they dampen her for the sound, so that she was much higher, because I used to have a 95 280, and that, what I found is that the old one was sounded like a tractor, and this one sounds more like a car. But when the guy took the dampener off, suddenly we're getting the raw back, which I quite like driving in a big tractor.
It does seem quite. I drove the MUX. It feels noisier. They've done quite well with the soundproofing on this thing.
What if you?
It doesn't feel that loud, this truck.
What if you? Because I mean, if it's a
brand new MUX sounds louder.
Does it? Because I thought the new diesels were.
This is exactly the same diesel. They haven't changed the engine. They just tweak the engine every time. It's Isuzu, it's such a great engine. Why would you want with that?
Exactly. So so it's an amazing. I think this is the actual best seller. I was surprised because there's the 250, which is a plain straight 2.5 litre engine without a turbo, and they are the real tractors, but they haven't got the same.
The reliability of the 2.5 not quite on the 3 litre, is it?
I've heard good things. I've heard a guy had a 2.5 and it done like 1 million kilometers because it's got no turbo, and because you can't go as fast, that you don't get as many revs, so the engine doesn't burn as hot.
So when you're buying one of these second-hand, what are those sort of things you're looking out for?
The big thing with these cars is the engine you can always do is looking at the body. What I see in Cape Town, most of the cars are rust buckets. So like now I went out and bought an old microbus in Oudtshoorn, and you say there's no bad nasties with the body. So I would look out for that, and also look out whether it's been off-road a lot, whether it's got a lot of little chips, little dings under in the chassis, whether it's been driven hard. This car was owned by an agent, and Pam Golding, estate agent, and she, I think the furthest off-road it had been is maybe kind of on her garden lawn when they washed it.
Absolutely, leather seats inside here. I mean, this is really this is the sort of car you can do 1 million Ks in.
Yeah, and a lot of people. This is the last year where 2003 was the last year when the Buckies didn't look like kind of bloated McDonald's food addicts. Suddenly, from 2004, the cars are twice the size, and I mean, I don't know why you need to have a bloated-looking car. And speaking to the farmers, they say the older ones are better because the problem is the new ones, when you're loading the back's too high, so people hurt their backs. So the farmers like the kind of lower profile Bucky. These high ones are really, I mean, I don't know.
What's more for off-roading than actual practical work.
Yeah. So, I mean, you look at this, has been on the road, like we're driving past an old Ford Bucky, that also lasts forever.
It's an old Cortina Bucky there. And Daly's just bought VW Kombi, which we're going to be having a ride in one of these days. And we're off to go and see a 1984 Renault 5, a yellow one.
Yeah, GDL, which is this iconic, absolutely kind of iconic small. It was when they started making small cars. The whole range was developed in the early 70s in reaction to the fuel crisis. So in 1973 there was a massive fuel crisis, and OPEC, the Middle Eastern countries, didn't want to sell fuel cheaply anymore to the West. So the reaction was they had to either stop driving cars or really start producing much smaller cars. So they started developing the little Renault, little 1100s with 2 doors, and then they realized that there was a demand for this. So it was the first kind of mini car. It was one of the first mini cars with a Mini Cooper, and there was a few other brands. But it's become now like this really amazing kind of retro vehicle.
Is it entering the collector's item sort of stage in years to come?
Well, they say like a vintage is after 40 years. So what a car is now
84,
like 36, and 4
so
years.
It's coming up for its 40th soon.
Yeah. So it's kind of coming up for vintage status, and we're on our way to go check it out now.
And a car like that would be prime for an electric sort of refit down the line if you ever have any engine problems. It's so light.
So yeah, this is what's happening is people are actually, if you look in Europe now, what you pay for. So this is the same vehicle cost between. There's a turbo version, which is they used to be this iconic little racing car, yeah, because it's rear wheel drive.
Is it rear wheel drive?
So it's kind of
that's iconic then for such a small car.
Yeah. So the road handling, if you just go on YouTube and look at the road handling capabilities.
Yeah.
And so there's a turbo version which is in a 1.4, which is a really quick little car, and they become some of those in mint condition are going for like between 12 and 16,000 pounds. And in the average, the little non-modified one, which I'm looking to buy, is in good conditions, going for between 3,000 and 4,000 pounds in England.
And over here you can get them for bargain prices, because people don't really even know what they're looking at.
Yeah. So what happened in Renault, a lot of them aren't looked after properly. So a lot of are broken down for spares, and occasionally, like this is an old man who's the guy who's got it at the moment is a car mechanic. He knew the owner and bought the car in the last couple of years. He's wanting to retire, and so the nice thing is that he's got full service history. And what I've seen is that the cars that are, there's very, very seldom cars of that age really looked after well, and we'll see. Range Rover, when you drive your Range Rover, no one looks at you, and you paid £1 million for it, and you've got your little Mini Cooper in immaculate condition. You paid 60,000 rand for it. Everyone turns around and stops you wherever they are to hear about this amazing vehicle.
You did right. I've driven all of the world's most expensive cars, and the biggest head turner I've driven was the 1964 Morris Minor.
There we go. And there's a guy, some lucky person. We went out to Manus and we saw an amazing Lancia, 2-litre Lancia, a Lancia Spider.
Delta, any Lancia is great.
And he's desperate to sell it, and he was wanting around about kind of 30,000 rand for that car, and it's 2-litre, and it's this iconic, amazing vehicle.
The Integrale is really one of the flagships of from the was that about an 84, similar generation to this one of yours.
So yeah, so it's similar. So this one was I think what the French realized is that your car has to be sexy and it has to be zippy, and it has to be very fuel efficient. So and that's the nice thing, because a lot of the other bigger 80s vehicles are like guzzlers.
And Renault have lost the plot in the last 30 years, you could say, with styling and reliability.
And now they're owned by who? Renault's?
No, Renault are owning, they've got a piece of Nissan, Mitsubishi. They got a finger on a few pies, and they actually haven't enhanced those brands.
If you think of Renault in Formula One, I think Nigel Mansell was in a Renault. Was he?
Prost, Senna, they all drove in the Williams Renault. You're quite right. And Schumacher didn't he win a world championship in a Benetton Renault as well?
He was a Benetton. I'm not sure if it was a Renault, but it was a Benetton.
It was a Benetton Renault. I don't know if he won it, but he definitely.
He won 1 year.
Renault at one time was supplying engines to both Williams and Benetton. The Flavio Briatore
and they had these amazing engineers, and the French, Renault were like a lot of kind of state, they were state subsidized, and they had to produce really good, reliable, exceptional. And that's the interesting thing is people say, oh, French cars are crap. You go and look at this old Renault, and there's a guy who talks about he went all the way through Europe in it. He did like 400,000 kilometers in the car in this little Renault we're going to go see now.
And those Peugeot 506s, 508s, the clocks
and the 504s.
Yeah.
And those vehicles, they're all over Egypt, Algeria, North Africa. They still this iconic car.
Good diesel engine in that.
Yeah.
What was it, a 1.7 diesel or something like that?
Yeah, up in Zimbabwe they have them as well. And so so we've moved away from quality, and again what happens is that there was this big drive towards everything being privatized in the 80s, thanks to people like Margaret Thatcher and Reagan, and people like Mitterrand went along with it, so that the quality of the product goes down. So what people don't realize is the more we go towards a highly competitive market, everything's about price, and therefore people compromise on quality to try and compete.
And it's also about profits, maximizing your profits, not maximizing your quality.
Yeah.
That's how Toyota made their mark, was the Kaizen philosophy of always improve, always innovate.
Yeah.
Whereas Henry Ford apparently used to say, which part on my car is not failing in X amount of time, and that part needs to make sure that it fails within 5 years so we can make after sales on it.
From parts.
That's just greedy.
Yeah. So that's what happened to Dodge. So Dodge in the 1960s were going bankrupt, and they had a meeting with the board members, and then they said the problem is that our cars at the moment we've been making have been lasting longer than the people who buy them. So Dodge also changed their philosophy from making these vehicles that just don't break. They were working vehicles, Buckies are called pickups in the US, and how those vehicles, everything got compromised. So in the 60s was about...
That was the golden age of American motoring, the 50s and the 60s.
And in the moment they went away from their core strength, which is actually kind of producing an exceptionally good quality car, and they try to compete with the Japanese with a mass-produced market. They lost. Yeah.
But now, unfortunately, Toyota and Honda are also, are they cutting a few corners? They're not producing in Japan much anymore. It's a wee bit watered down, wouldn't you say?
Well, it's just very sad that one had a brand. I mean, we just drive past a little Nissan Champ. They've been this amazing vehicle since the 80s. And are they still made, or they stopped made?
No, now they got replaced by the MP, the MP something, the Nissan with a Renault engine, which the turbo is going to give you issues. So it's no longer the bulletproof 1.4.
So it's the MPV, which is supposed to be is that the kind of multi-purpose?
The MP200 or something like that. It's basically the modern Champ, slightly bigger one, not as hardy.
It's hopeless. Someone I know had one, and it gave so much hassle with the turbo, overheated, the radiator problems, oil leaks within 40,000 kilometers that he just flogged it for nothing. He said, and so that's the problem, is that
it's a Renault under the skin. It's not a Nissan. The problem is Renault, they should have said, okay, the French, what are they good? They're very stylish. You do the styling. The Japanese very good at mechanics. You do the mechanics, and they'd have a very powerful brand, two powerful brands.
And then they started to kind of compete with each other. So it's amazing that these big companies can spend so much money and make such huge mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's funny, if you just look around at the older vehicles within South Africa, there's an old Golf 1 which is in front of us. It's probably made in the 1990s. There's a Mazda just past that. It's also from the 90s.
Yeah. The 323, that's probably about a 96, 97. Engines are very good, but the bodies. The Classic was the first generation 323. That is a collector's item now. The one that almost looks like the car from Wayne's World.
Yeah, so those vehicles are becoming. So what they're saying is the Ford Sapphire and the Ford Sierra. I thought those cars, the shapes were amazing for the age in the 80s.
The Sierra XR6,
and what people are saying now is that people are putting them in cotton wool and then locking them away in garages, and they know those vehicles in time are going to become iconic. And it's interesting. So
14 at 3 litre.
Yeah. All those old vehicles are going to be the cars of the future. So Moved to
Here's
work.
a Land Cruiser 105. I mean,
Is that a good car?
gee, that's about as bulletproof as it gets.
That's old school. A friend of mine had one of those, but he said he had to remortgage his house to go to pay for the fuel.
You know, well, the thing is, you can get the petrol for 200k cheaper, so it depends how much you're going to use it. But yeah, the petrols, they do sip. You want to get the 1.8Z, the 4.2 straight six. That's probably the toughest diesel. That's the only diesel I can say that's tougher than this one. Is that 1.8Z Land Cruiser engine?
Yeah, I mean,
But not by much.
Not by much. I mean, this one even with the blown head gasket, it's still
Stronger than ever.
No, because it knew that we had to enjoy our holiday, so it drove from Swellendam 250 k's
With a blown head.
with a knocking sound in the engine.
Yeah.
And we managed to get all the way to the Crags and all the way back home. So what I like about it is that the car doesn't other cars will say, cool, you're basically going to spend your holidays in Swellendam in 45-degree heat. This car's no, dude. We're going to push forward. We're going to drive at 100 the whole way and just chill out, and then which is what we did.
Any overheating issues along the way?
And that's my big learning. On the way there, I was running late and trying to get out of town, and I was driving 140. So what it also showed me was that the moment you start pushing this to 3,500 revs, if you sit between 2 and 3, you're in heaven with fuel consumption and.
But with a gamey radiator, I mean, you are accelerating it, but it would have happened sooner or later.
Yeah. And you know what? If I look with a friend of mine who's got a new VW that had onboard computer, he spent 35,000 on a new computer. So for me, every 9 years to spend 15,000 rand on a lesson to look after my radiator isn't the end of the world.
Exactly.